Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tracy Talks, the alternate point of view. I am really excited about this video because this is happening right here in the state of Texas, in San Antonio, just down the road. You guys, this is interesting because this involves police officers and it involves mental health. It involves a crime that was committed. It involves resisting arrest. It involves so many different things and elements that I can't wait to get you guys' opinion on. But first of all, I want to say welcome to the channel. Welcome if you are new. Welcome if you've been here from the beginning. And I just cannot wait to just dive right into this story. This is a case that I just happened upon actually midway through this trial. The trial is going on right now, but it is a very interesting, convoluted, discombobulated, oh my gosh, all the big words that I can possibly say about this. But it's very interesting because it's hard to separate because we all have a lot of feelings, right? We have a lot of emotions that we want to get into this with, that we want to talk about. Because it is a very tragic story. And I do want to say, first of all, how sad it is that somebody lost their life. Okay. Melissa Perez lost her life. She ended up being killed in this incident. She was 46 years old. She was a mother. She was a sister. She was an aunt. She was a person that was suffering from a mental illness. And it sucks, you guys. It really does suck. This entire situation is crappy. But at the same time, I have to say it all could have been avoided. This entire situation could have been avoided. So I don't know if you guys have seen videos on TikTok or, just videos in general of cops that make traffic stops that could have been an easy peasy stop. It could have been super simple. Okay. You get stopped, or maybe not you, right? But a person gets stopped. Okay. And the cop goes up to the window and they're like, hey, I need to see your license, your registration, your insurance. And the person's like, no, I'm not giving it to you. And they won't even roll the window down. And they start spouting off some shenanigans like, I know my rights. I don't have to tell you anything. Okay. You just turned what could have been an easy, here you go. It could have been a warning. It could have been nothing. It could have been, see ya, have a great day. Nada. But instead, you just turned it into a big deal. Now it's turned into you might be going to jail. And now you've made it an uncomfortable situation, possibly a dangerous situation. Now you've made the cop get on a defense. Now you've made the cop concerned that you could be a danger. Now you've made it escalated. Now you've made the cop have to call for backup. Now you've made the situation heightened. So instead of just complying, you've turned it into something much bigger than it needed to be. You've turned a mountain out of a molehill. Okay? That's exactly what happened here. A lot of people are using the term FAFO. That's pretty much what happened here. Now, in my videos and on my channel, I like to separate, excuse me, fact from feelings, because we can feel however we want. Excuse me. We can feel however we want, and you're entitled to your own feelings. You're entitled to feel however you like about anything. You're entitled to have all of your own opinions, which is amazing. That's what I love about this channel. I love for people to comment and say anything they like. So I can feel that this is tragic. I can feel that this is absolutely awful. And I can feel that this didn't need to happen. And it didn't. It absolutely didn't need to happen. But the fact of the matter is, if not for Melissa's actions, none of this would have happened. If not for the officer who got onto the scene first, none of this would have happened. If not for a couple of the officers' actions in the beginning, none of this would have happened. But unfortunately, there were a lot of things that kind of dominoed into what happened in the end. Do I believe that these officers that are on trial right now should be charged with murder? I do not. I do not believe that these officers should be charged with murder. I don't believe they should be on trial for murder. I don't believe they committed murder. I believe that they did their jobs. I believe that this situation should not have occurred. And if you don't know what murder is and the threshold that these prosecutors have to prove to destroy these three officers' lives, which, by the way, it's hard enough to be a police officer anywhere, but to charge three police officers with murder who were there doing their jobs, which also, once you see how many officers that were on this scene, you're going to be like, are you freaking serious? Are you serious? It took 15 officers to go detain one woman. I mean, what is San Antonio Police Department doing? So let's talk about what happened with Melissa Perez. On June 23rd, 2023. And why are only 3 out of 15 police officers being charged with her death? So on June 23rd, 2023, a call was made regarding fire alarms going off in an apartment complex in San Antonio, Texas. What occurred was the fire department responding to this call just before midnight. And it appears that Melissa Perez had gone and cut the wires of the fire alarm panel in her apartment complex, which was causing the alarms to go off, which, by the way, is against the law. So San Antonio PD responds, as well as the fire department. The fire department hands this over to the San Antonio Police Department after they discover that she has cut the wires. She is not acting like a normal person. San Antonio police question her, and they decide to walk her over to the patrol car where she is being detained. And the police officer begins to ask her questions. He's going to enter her into his computer and look her up. As he begins to enter her in the computer, another officer arrives to ask her questions. And apparently, whatever reason, she does not like that officer in particular, and she takes off running. That officer starts to pursue her. The other officer, who did not get the chance to enter her information into the computer, also begins to pursue her, and they are running after her, where she takes off and runs into her apartment and locks her door, and they are trying to get her out of the apartment. Now, she is not under arrest, but she is detained. I'm not sure if you know the difference between being under arrest and being detained. There's not really any difference. I don't know what the difference is either, but apparently when you're being detained by police, you are being held for questioning. So she was being detained due to the fact that she had done something, and the officers wanted to get her information because they were questioning her, and he hadn't finished doing that yet. So she was detained. And now she is taken off running. The other officer who showed up on the scene didn't know if she was a witness, if she was a suspect, if she was what she was. So he took off running after her, and the first officer on the scene took off running after him, running after her. So this turned into a whatever. right? So now she's locked herself in the apartment. They don't know who she is. They don't know what she is. They don't know if there's something in the apartment, if she has, they don't know. They know her name, uh, but they don't know anything about her. They don't know if she's a danger to herself or others. She did tell the first officer that she was a diagnosed schizophrenic, but that was just something from some psycho doctor that diagnosed her with that. She didn't believe she was a schizophrenic. So now, just by the way, all of this information is coming out in court. A lot of this information, cops don't know this stuff when they're first arresting someone or detaining someone or any of that information. So by this point, you have two cops at the scene. Now they're calling for backup because they're trying to get this woman to come out of her apartment and she refuses. She's refusing to come out of her apartment. They're trying to get her to come out nicely. They're pretending to be housekeeping. They're pretending to be whatever to get her to come out of the apartment. She will not come out. She's telling them they have to have a warrant. They don't have to have a warrant because they've already tried. She's already in trouble for cutting the wires to a fire alarm that's causing the alarm to go off that the fire department has had to turn off on purpose, that now can't go off again if in case there's an actual fire. So this is a hazard to the complex. Now the maintenance man is out. So this is now turned into a ripple effect of now more officers being taken off the streets because now they're having to deal with this possible schizophrenic woman who we don't know is a danger to herself or others. So now more officers are coming out, trying to talk this woman into coming out. The problem is there's a particular officer who is kind of a not so great negotiator. He's sort of an instigator, and he's talking smack to Melissa and calling her kind of names, calling her, are you a gang member? Are you, and just instigating her more, baiting her. And she's yelling at them, saying, I'm not coming out. You're harassing me. You don't have a warrant. Go get a warrant. And this is going on for not 10 minutes, not 30 minutes, not an hour. This goes on for 2 hours to the point that there is 15 officers. 15 officers. So here are the facts. This starts out as a one officer call to a scene where a woman, 46 years old, 5'1", 145 pounds, broke the law. She cut the wires to a fire alarm that ended up becoming a felony. She was being detained and questioned. She ran from the police, barricaded herself in her apartment, and while the police were trying to get into her apartment, she was yelling, throwing things at these police officers, and then eventually came at them with a hammer. She hit one of those police officers, and then finally, in the worst moment of all, ended up being shot and killed by police officers. Now, 3 of those officers are being charged with murder. There were a total of 16 shots fired, and 2 of those shots hit Melissa Perez. Those are the facts of this case. Now, what has not been said yet by me is there was a disabled man also in her apartment that was bedridden, that the cops later found out was in her apartment, that they felt could have possibly been in danger by Melissa because she was unstable. Also, other things that have come out is that Melissa was not taking her antipsychotic medication, and she was also a meth addict and an alcoholic. Those issues aside, the facts that matter are that the law was broken. She ran from the police. She barricaded herself in her apartment. She refused to come out, and she came after the police with a weapon, candle, and hammer. And she did actually hit one of the police officers. Now, then, obviously, they shots fired and ended up killing her. Feelings. Let's get into the feelings. Feelings are how horrific that it got to this situation and got to this point that she lost her life. Uh, how awful is it that she's living alone, and with a disabled person, that she's on drugs, that she isn't taking her medication, that she's schizophrenic. It's just sad. It's just really, really sad. Uh, I just think it's really sad. I think it's sad that she is not stable. Also, I think it's really sad that 15 officers, it took 15 officers to come to this call. I think there's a breakdown in our response to something like this. Um, and I don't think officers are trained to handle a mental health situation. And I also feel like officers are shouldn't be dealing with mental health situations. And I feel like this could have been a if she was just being detained. I feel like if the fire department didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, these are just feelings. These are feelings I'm saying, okay? I feel like if the fire department didn't think it was a big deal and they thought like, okay, I just cut the alarm off, then you can cite her and go about your business, you know? Like, but here's what went awry. She ran. The other officer that came on scene did not know what the situation was, and the first officer on scene didn't explain things properly. So the communication breakdown is where this all went haywire. So the communication breakdown is where this just completely went nuts. So the first officer on scene did not explain, hey, this woman, I was just getting her information. If we can just put her in the system, we can find out what's up. She's clearly just cuckoo. So we'll just go to the station and figure out what we need to do. But instead, this just continued and ripple affected into a much bigger, broader situation than it needed to be. Also, the sergeant did come onto the scene, and the sergeant did make the decisions. The sergeant is in charge of making the decisions on what happens. So I don't know why these 3 officers are being charged. I know they're the ones that fired. They were one of the last officers brought to the scene. They were the closest to the window and the door of being attacked. They were protecting their sergeant. So they fired protecting their sergeant. They didn't fire because they were like, we're going out to kill someone tonight. When you are charged with murder, murder is an intentional killing of another person. These officers didn't go out to work that night and say, I'm going to intentionally take someone's life tonight with my weapon because that's what I feel like doing tonight. That is not at all how this happened. They literally, you can see in the body cam footage, they're literally like, what is happening here? What is going on? This is crazy. We are just wasting our time. But when it came down to the moment, they literally had no choice. It was in the moment. Their sergeant was being a weapon wielded against him, and they just did what they're trained to do. And for people to sit there and say, well, that's too many rounds. That's too many. That's not what you're trained. You're not trained to count and go, oh, I just shoot one shot in the air or whatever. No, that's not how it works. They are trained to shoot center mass. That's how they're trained. They're not trained to shoot in the leg, shoot in the arm, shoot in the shoulder. That's not how it works. Because if you look at the patio door, that there's a TV in front, there's a wall, there's you are trained one specific way to shoot, and you shoot the center, dead center. Where I have an issue with the way things were done is because they're running around this apartment building looking to see where the other bullets went, because I'm telling you right now, when you shoot, they go places. And because there was another person in the apartment, it could have killed the other person. So I have a problem with that. But I'm looking at this situation and going, they did what they were trained to do. They are trained to shoot dead center. That's what they're trained to do. They're not trained to count how many rounds come out of their weapon. They're not trained to sit there and go, oh, let me count, let me stop and think, okay, I got 1, 2, okay, stop. That's not what they're trained to do. They're trained to keep firing until the threat is gone, period. So that is facts over feelings. It feels like a lot because it is a lot. The other issue I have is that the officers that are being charged, they're all these 3 officers, Eliezer Alejandro, Alfred Flores, and Nathaniel Villalobos, are all being charged out of the 15 officers that were there. Okay, 15 officers, and these 3 guys are being charged with murder. They have been fired. They have lost their careers. And the other officers, they're still working as San Antonio police officers. And these guys don't have careers. And also, I will let you know that the court system has dropped and dismissed any civil suit charges against these officers. Why is the prosecution so dead set on this criminal charge against these officers? It makes no sense. Not only that, but these charges were filed against these officers within 12 hours before they were able to see all 15 different versions of body cam footage, before there was an investigation into this entire case. They walked over to the courthouse to get warrants on these 3 particular officers. That's how fast this was investigated. I just feel like it is a very sad, sad, sad situation. It's horrible. It shouldn't have happened. But there are a lot of other things that occurred beforehand that shouldn't have happened. And I think it starts from the beginning. It starts from the very, very beginning. Melissa Perez should still be here. And maybe she would have done something else due to her mental health, but she wouldn't probably have died this violent of a death. I think it's really sad, but I think that this situation shouldn't have happened. Feeling wise, if I have to feel about it, but I will tell you, this trial is a absolute atrocity. It is a joke. I think it does not help with our mental health crisis. I don't think it helps police departments solve anything. I don't think it helps shine light on our police departments for mental health. And I can tell you, watching these body cam videos of how the police department handles mental health, it's very embarrassing. It's really sad, because the police department, they're not trained for that. They're definitely not trained for it, and they're not very sympathetic to mental health issues. And it's kind of a joke. It's pretty much of a mockery. So it makes you kind of sick to watch these videos of these officers and how they treat Melissa. It's kind of disgusting, because the officers that are not on trial are the ones that are the not so good cops, and they're still working for the San Antonio Police Department. That's what's really bad. The one that was treating Melissa so poorly and was mocking her, he's still a San Antonio police officer. The ones that are on trial, the ones that were defending their sergeant, and unfortunately are the ones that had to pull the trigger, they're not the ones who were being so ugly to her. So I think it's really sad to even look at this entire situation. But I do want to definitely show you what occurred, what happened in the footage, because it's really sad what happened to Melissa, why this happened. But it shows you that this shouldn't have happened. And you can see how many police officers are there. It's absolutely insane how many police officers there. It's almost like, how many cops to take a screw in a light bulb? Like, seriously?
Tomorrow, and we'll be sure to give you updates as they develop. I'm Taylor Whartonby reporting. The video shows.
So
Day 3 in the trial of the death.
that's the original officer on the scene.
Brought raw moments as jurors watched body camera footage from Officer Robert Ramos, the second officer on scene after Officer Jesus Rojas. The video shows officers first on the scene encounter Perez. She runs into her apartment and they try to make contact by banging on the door and even pretending to be housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
Everybody's watching you on camera around the world on national TV. You jump that? That's fine. Officers are speaking with Perez through her patio door. They're asking her to come outside, but she's refusing to. She then tells them they're harassing her.
Well, we just asked you to come outside. Come outside, Melissa.
Hey, everybody, you see this, America?
Melissa, come outside.
At one point, an officer reaches through a window, trying to unlock a patio door, but Perez comes toward him with a hammer. Moments later, in a now silent courtroom, the video shows the officers firing their weapons. Now trial will.
So that is absolutely insane that that many police officers were there, that it took that many officers to try to get her out of her apartment. And she wasn't coming out. She was not going to come out. It wouldn't have mattered if they had 100 police officers there. They even had officers showing up with shields, okay, to try to get her out of the apartment. They did not need a warrant. So I just want you to understand that. She was under arrest. They were allowed to go into her apartment. They had an exigent circumstance with the disabled person in the apartment, because by this time they knew there was another person in the apartment. They'd been there for 2 hours now. They had some more information. They gathered more information. But I just want you to know, 15 officers are now on the scene. Not all the officers knew all the information. Okay. That's the problem with this situation, is that not all the officers knew what was going on. Most of these officers were there just backing up each other. So the original officers, some of the officers knew what was going on. Some of the officers knew what the plan was. Some of the officers were like, okay, here's what we're going to do. One of us is going to go in this window. One of us is going to try to go in the back door. Like, it was really, really just convoluted. It made no sense. At the end of the day, this was a really, really stupid plan. what should have happened, and we can Monday morning quarterback this all day long. We can backseat driver, we can whatever we want to call it, cliche. Uh, at the end of the day, this should not have happened. This was a complete and total screw up on the San Antonio Police Department's behalf. Okay. Should these officers be charged with murder? I don't believe they should be. I don't believe these officers should be on trial for murder. I believe these officers showed up to work on June 23rd, 2023. I believe they had the unfortunate task of backing up the idiot Rojas who didn't detain Melissa Perez properly, get her information, and do his job like he was supposed to. Or clearly he didn't think she was a threat in the first place because he had her walking behind him when he was going to get her information in the beginning. Whatever the reason is, this all shouldn't have happened. But coulda, woulda, shoulda, a person's dead in an awful, awful way. So my thought is these guys shouldn't be on trial for murder. I think this is a terrible, terrible situation. If anyone is watching this trial, y'all, it's crazy. The defense and the prosecution is just going at each other like it's wild. It is wild because these officers should not be on trial. The San Antonio Police Department must be absolutely torn apart. I don't know who anyone can trust in that department. I don't know how San Antonio is possibly dealing with this. I don't know how crime is being solved. I don't know how the people of San Antonio are even like trusting the San Antonio Police Department right now. I just can't believe like what is happening there. It's got to be nuts. And it's just putting a huge highlight on just trusting police. And it's putting a huge highlight on the lack of care or help for mental help. Melissa's family tried everything they could. She was very fortunate. She had a family that was able to try to help her. She did go through programs. She did get to see psychiatrists. Her family actually was very supportive of her, but they also finally got to a point where they were like, you know what? We can't take it anymore. We just can't. If you're not willing to help yourself, we have done all we can do, but we can't do any more for you. Because Melissa knew she was schizophrenic. She knew she needed to be on medication. Her family helped her pay her rent. Her family, they did all they could do. So it's not that Melissa didn't have all the advantages that in the world for her mental health. That's Neo. But her family helped her pay her rent. They helped her get through programs. They helped her do all the things they possibly could, but Melissa refused, absolutely refused to stay on her medication. She also kept doing drugs. She also kept drinking. So she chose to go down the wrong path. She chose to continuously not stay well. I'm not saying that she was a bad person or any of those things. Her family also, like I said, her family was on the stand. They tried to explain that they tried everything. And I know a lot of people will say, mental health, there just isn't enough help out there, and there is not enough help. Mental health is outrageously expensive. There is no programs out there. There's not enough programs out there. There's just not enough help. And you feel as a family member, as a person, your hands are tied. You cannot help your loved one. So I can only imagine how her family felt, but you can't help someone that won't help themselves. So, as tragic and horrible as this is, I feel terrible for her family. I hate this for them. I hate that they're going through this. So I hope that everyone will keep in mind that someone did lose their life in this situation. And I hope that we can find some sympathy and understanding for anyone who's going through any mental health issues, um, and their family members that have to deal with that. But I hope that everyone will also understand that I do not believe that these officers uh, purposefully murdered Melissa Perez, and I do not believe they should be on trial for murder. I think that's a high, high threshold. And I think that the city of San Antonio has made a huge mistake. I do believe that there should definitely be some discipline and training around this for the San Antonio Police Department. I think there is a huge lesson to be learned from this. And I think all of these angles from this body cam footage should definitely be watched. And I think the way they treated Melissa should definitely, definitely be revisited. And I can say that it's not a perfect system. I don't think that when they're talking about how they have a mental health unit during the day, but not at night, I'm not saying that's the answer per se, as far as having a mental health unit, because when you go into a situation unarmed, when you're dealing with mental health crisis, it's not always the safest situation. But I will say the way they treated Melissa was not good. So I would say this is a definite learning tool for any department, not just the San Antonio Police Department. And I would say for these attorneys, this is a learning lesson and a way to prosecute cases. I think that you guys need to go back and read the law. And I think you need to go and get real criminals and look at what's going on out there and stop trying to make a name for yourself, and understand that if you want to help society, try to help what's going on with our mental health and maybe look for solutions instead of going after and ruining other people's lives. These cops were doing their job. They were out there doing what they were tasked to do. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate what happened. But this is what I think. This is what I feel, my feelings. But I gave you the facts of the case. And I think it's sad. We are going into day 16 of this trial on Monday. The defense is now up. So we will see what happens. You guys let me know what you think. I have a friend of mine. She's watching this trial. She's from the same area. So we're going back and forth what our thoughts are on this case. But it's been really great getting another viewpoint. So please let me know what you guys think about this. And I hope you're watching. It is the 3 San Antonio Police Department officers, ex-police department officers that are on trial for the murder. And they all 3 face up to life in prison for the murder of Melissa Perez from June 23rd, 2023. So let me know what you guys think about this. I'm looking forward to your opinions. We always know when cops are on trial, it's a big deal. So, and Neo, of course, always has to say goodbye. So thanks, you guys. I will see you in the next video. I look forward to seeing you, and we'll see you soon.